Brasil, como está você? Eu falo um pouco. Thermodynamics. Oh, I actually love thermodynamics. Hola from Colombia, Sergio Rodriguez. Okay, perfect. So I think we're ready to start. Let me bring some of our sponsors. We will have Eduardo, whose page we have been squatting today. And also we are going to have me from STEMedia and our guest for tonight. I have my funnel cake with me ready to watch this week's. That's so amazing. I'm so excited. And I'm so excited to have you on the show soon. Pakistan. Oh, that's so cool. All right. So let me go ahead and bring our friends. Or if you want, okay, perfect. So bring our friends. Who else has funnel cake or popcorn? What do you guys want to see today?
Hello.
Hi, Eduardo. How are you?
Good.
I'm
Good,
taking over
good.
your
Just
page.
Wednesday. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got the password, so you're in.
I'm not giving it back either.
I know
kidding.
she hacks my account every week, so
Yes, I do. And I'm wearing your shirt. So for anybody who wants to buy this shirt, that's pretty cool. Just go on the link in his bio. You can buy it. This is one of my favorite shirts. Yeah, I don't even wear I don't really wear branded shirts, but this is pretty cool. So
yeah, you can go in the link in bio in the profile if you want to get yours. There's more shirts available too, so check them out.
Can I offer one for free next week for Women in STEM Wednesday?
Next week we'll do a giveaway. Yeah, we'll do a giveaway next week.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Amazing.
So are we bringing in Nee or?
Yeah, I actually asked him to
in?
join, but it said that I think that Nee, if you can request to join, that'd be great.
There's the
Starters packs only. He said to not give me your password. Hi, Nee. How are you?
What's up? All right, I'm good. Can y'all see me well? I think we got a lot of light in here. Well, I'm glistening right now. I got this glow. I got that special glow right now, y'all.
Is that post-COVID glow? Did you get your vaccine already?
I did. I got my first shot. I didn't get the second one yet.
Did you get any symptoms?
No, so far so good. I'm pretty good, pretty resilient. What about y'all?
I haven't gotten the shot.
You haven't?
Every time I try to book it, it's full. It's like I can't even go.
Yeah.
I don't know. I gotta figure it out, but I will soon. Oh yeah.
I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried to get my shot because I heard some of my friends have been knocked down, and I have a lot of work. But this weekend I'm trying to get it, so I'm trying to get all my work done. So in case I don't have a good reaction, then I can rest. Yeah.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't feel anything but local soreness. What's going on, everybody? Hey, Claudia's in the audience searching.
Danny.
Jones, our friend. Thanks, Danny. Said I'm glowing a little bit. Appreciate that.
So we're bringing in the guest.
Yeah. I definitely want to hop in and say, hey, shout out to my friends again, Papaya Tutors, Lumis, Engineering Memes Guy. I'm going to go ahead and have the privilege of introducing our guest. I'll read the bio here. Our guest for this evening, Women in STEM Wednesday, is Edidiong Obot. She is a proud first-generation Nigerian American with a strong cultural ties that impact her community and influences her cultural awareness. This is important because we're going to be talking about cultural diversity in STEM today. She's an alumna of Texas Southern University, where she obtained a Bachelor's of Science in Chemistry and a Master's of Science in Environmental Toxicology. She's worked all over the environmental industry, and I know that this is going to be a great conversation, that you all are going to learn a lot from her. Mm-hmm. And she has capacity in research development, private industry, and the public. She currently serves as a public servant for Harris County in Houston, Texas. I'm not going to give away her entire story, but I can tell you that there's a lot that she has to share from various angles when it comes to perspectives in diversity and STEM. So without further ado, Sandra, is she on? Are you with us?
So let me invite her.
Edidiong.
Edidiong.
Yay! I'm here.
Edidiong, welcome sorry, to Women in STEM Wednesdays. I'm so excited that you're here. We've been
Yeah,
waiting
same
for
here.
you. I'm so sorry that you had like technical difficulties, but let me see if we can get Eduardo again. And while we wait for him, what we can do is go ahead and introduce yourself so we know all about you. You're a chemist. You did your master's degree in toxic environmental. I'm sorry, you can say it. I don't want to butcher it.
No, it's fine. So yeah, I did my bachelor's degree in chemistry, and I did my master's degree in environmental toxicology. I've had the opportunity to work in academia, doing research, also worked in private industry, as well as in government. Yes, thank you, STEMedia, for welcoming me. So I've had the opportunity to work with the Air Force Research Lab. I've worked with CDC. I've worked with UNCF. I've worked with NASA doing research. So I've done quite a few things in the research aspect, and I got that. And then I decided, hey, I don't know if I necessarily want to be in the lab because I'm a people person. And so how can I take that, what I know, hey, cosmically minded, how can I take what I know out of the lab and into the community? So that's what I feel like that's what I'm doing now.
Yes, yes, yes. So I'm gonna go and circle back to that. And I saw that you sent me some memes that you wanna review, and I'm very excited about that. So let me share those with you.
All right.
So, how studying goes most of the time.
Man, this is so true. I don't know about y'all, but the procrastination is so real, especially when you have like a test coming up, then you get distracted by food, or your show is about to come on and you're like, dang, okay, I'm gonna watch this show, and then after that, in the next hour, I'm gonna go ahead and get to studying, and then another show comes on. Then you have all your reading materials, and then you got all these projects due. Man, that was part of my life as a chemistry student.
That's hilarious. I definitely feel that. So let me go to the next one. But yes, I don't know why. So what do you think can help? Like, because here we want to help like students like you and I were once, and how do you think that, like, how did you beat procrastination? Because I heard that procrastination is actually getting worse in our society, not better. But then we like to blame the education system. So how do you
Right.
beat
So
procrastination?
for me, it was my study group, to be honest. And I feel like that's such a cliche, but it really was like the people that I connected with. They were like, hey, don't we have this test coming up? And I'm like, yeah, but they would drag me to like a Starbucks, or we would go to each other's house, and we were like, all right, we're gonna put ourselves on like a time clock. We're gonna study this chapter for about 30-40 minutes, and then in between we'll give ourselves a little break and we can do something else, and then kind of do like that. So that's what helped with like at least trying to overcome procrastination, so that when we got to the test, we're not just cramming. Especially with chemistry, it's kind of hard to cram chemistry. Either you know it or you're just gonna fail. That's that.
You know what?
A lot of STEM is like that. You can try to finesse it, but if you don't know what you're doing, then it's like, yeah. So the cramming kind of works, but it kind of doesn't work depending on what you're trying to study for. But I also try to like section out like when we're going to study, right? So even after class, we're like, hey, okay, maybe this week let's go over the material and go pick like a day where we can go over and just review. It's not every week, but we'll try to do it like, hey, let's review this stuff. We got a test coming up in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks. Let's try to do some kind of like brief review. So yeah.
So what was your hardest class through like your chemistry?
Listen, so your female engineer, I'm with you. I failed organic chemistry.
Organic it is.
I hear the same
failed
story from so
it.
many people.
I failed part 2. So let me tell you a fun fact. So God rest his soul. My chemistry department chair, Dr. Sapp, was so nice. And even though he was nice, he failed me. Okay. I got an F. Like, what? And I was like, oh my God, I got so many plans. I can't get an F in chemistry. So I went to Houston Community College and I ended up taking the class there and I passed it. So then I told myself, I said, it's not that you don't know it, it's because you didn't apply yourself and you didn't take it. So you thought it was just going to be a walk in the park, like it just comes naturally. And I actually had to like put an effort and study. So the next time around I took it, I ended up passing it. I think I got like a B in the class or something like that. But I will say that it was not my best subject. So to test myself in grad school, I ended up taking organic reactions so that I can make sure that I know that I know that I know that I know organic chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
And I got an A in that class too. So
Yay!
I was like, ooh, okay, I still know my stuff.
Yeah,
Still
you
got
know,
it.
one thing about hard classes, right, is um, one thing I learned is that you need to know how to study. Just because you read it doesn't mean you got it right. Even being in a group helped as well, right? So knowing how to study is important. One thing I learned was that the book already gives you examples. So even going through the lectures, just kind of going back and looking at the example problems
Yes.
help. So sometimes you start one way and then you realize that you're doing it wrong. So improving your study skills is super important.
I think too with like chemistry is a lot more. You have to be like a person who can imagine and
Mm-hmm.
also be creative because you're talking about like molecules. You're talking about things that are not, you can't tangibly see them. So when you're doing that and then you're also trying to figure out the formulations, or you're trying to figure out what the solution is supposed to be or how much of this is supposed to be, like you have to kind of have a mindset of, okay, this is ideally what it looks like. And if you're in the
Mm-hmm.
lab, then you can see kind of what it's supposed to look like.
Right.
But when you're talking about the transactions and stuff, talking about energy levels and all that, like you can't physically see those things. So,
Right.
you know, that's kind of like chemistry in general. Like you can't physically see a lot of those things. But then some things, like when it comes down to the end solution, you see what the product looks like. So.
Mm-hmm. It's like magic.
And I see my like beautiful woman in STEM supporting other women in Papaya. I asked you this because my hardest class was statics, statics and dynamics actually. Um, Chemistry, I was good in high school, but I don't know in college what happened. I did not like it, but I passed it and I didn't have to take it again, thank God. Um, but then later on, when I started programming Java, I took it online. So I really feel it for everybody that's taking online classes. I don't know
Right.
how they're doing it because their study groups are not there. And that is what kind of like propel me to create Papaya Tutor, because I feel like also with tutoring that helps you. Obviously, tutoring, here in US is very expensive, and we
Mm-hmm.
make it affordable. And because we want to level playing the field, as I, mentioned before in our stories, well, in Engineering Sky story, so AKA, Eduardo here. But yeah, like we want to level playing the field, and we want to provide tutoring for a third of the cost on average. So yeah, hopefully that makes it more affordable and more accessible to everyone. Because I know I'm one of the non-traditional college students, as so are you and you, and it's great that we're all here killing it in STEM. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
go ahead. Yes, yes. So definitely, like, don't be afraid to ask for help. Um, or like get study groups together, or even just get like a Zoom study group. You don't like just help yourself. I love study groups too. Like I definitely went from a B student to an A student just by doing study groups, and being
Mm-hmm.
more proactive in my studying. So I'm gonna go ahead on the next meme, and I told everybody to let us know what's their best study hacks in the comments. So
somebody's talking about letting some classical music go on, like in the background. It's like, oh, I put music too.
All right, teacher, right. Sorry, 100 times. Ah, man, this just reminds me of my math classes, man. That's why I thought that was hilarious. But yeah, it just reminded me of my math classes.
Yeah,
And just like this like a shortcut, but then you have like calculus, especially like Cal 2. You just had like so many different kind of equations to get you to the same answers, and then your professor is asking you for the longer version just to make sure you got it with no calculator, even though you could just input what Bart just put there in a calculator and get that 100 times. Sorry. So, but yeah. So that's what I say about that meme.
Did you ever program on your TI-84 calculators? Because I definitely program my formulas there sometimes. No? Am I the only
that's called cheating, Sandra. That's called cheating.
Listen, they did not allow us to do that. When we came into the classroom, they checked your calculator because people had programs on it. And you know that I think it was a TI-84 where you could put like it had the periodic table on there too. So people are using it for chemistry class, they were using it for calculus class, and the teachers caught on and they would like check your calculators before you came in. Wow. And like make sure it's clear. So we could not program equations or anything like that.
But an electrical engineering, did you have to take that, Eduardo? Yeah, you did, right?
I took circuits 1, yeah.
On principles, you have to, right? I don't know. Maybe I did cheat. Yeah, I didn't even know. So this is funny.
Yes. So I thought that this was funny because this was kind of like my life. I'm like asking why, like, especially when I was taking physical chemistry. I was just like, why? Then I was like, oh, that's why. And part of why was like, why didn't I take differential equations? I understood why now, because you needed those equations to understand enthalpy, entropy, all those different things in physical chemistry. And I was just like, oh, okay, well, I didn't take it. They didn't say I had to take it, so I didn't take it. But maybe I should have. I would have gotten this a little bit quicker. Or sometimes you're just kind of like, why are you adding this and that together? And then when you see the product, you're like, oh, okay. Now I understand what concentrations are. Oh, now I understand acids and bases, stuff like that. So,
what was your biggest aha moment?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think my biggest aha moment was actually when I started working for the county. I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I think that was my biggest aha moment, that I was able to move from just like environmental compliance to like now I'm doing like community organizing. I was just like, oh, and now I'm using what I learned, my experience in like trade and environmental and the sciences to community organizing. So when that began to like merge and kind of like come to a headway, I was like, oh, so this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. So yeah.
This is funny. So Eduardo can talk about that because he actually not only runs a very successful memes account. Eduardo, tell us about you. Brag a little. He's also the CEO of automation company. So I'll let you brag about yourself.
I'll talk. And we haven't met Edidiong. We haven't really spoke, but just based on what you're doing, I'm really curious a lot about how you affect law and the regulations in Texas. So being an engineer, I always think about the future and how I can improve it, and definitely the environment is one way, one thing that I want to have an influence on. So I always thought about regulations and the law side of things. How do you collect data to show the government that this power plant is outputting these chemicals and is affecting the areas around it. So So I'm curious to learn, more about those things, which I think are really interesting, and I think people should know about. And yeah, like Sandra was saying, I get into machine and design processes, automate processes, and we do get into chemical processes and different things. So, I definitely want to start getting into those questions. Are we done with the meme review, or we still have a few more memes?
We have one more. But the reason why I wanted to, because she's talking about her aha moment and how it
Hmm.
clicked, and she was able to really grasp the idea once she was on the field. And I know you and I have talked about that, like to provide externships and internships, very early on your engineering career. Why? That way, whether you're in the right field or not. Maybe you
Right,
don't want
right.
to be an environmental engineer. Maybe you want to be, I don't know, mechanical, or you like mechatronics, or you switch your major, and that's okay. Because at the end of the day, your job is going to be at least 40 hours a week, and those hours should be meaningful and happy to you. So, and I know that Eduardo and I care really about the student's life. So that's STEMedia with all the mentorship and just elevating and inspiring. So that's what I was like talking about Lumis and what you guys are doing in order to, have more engineer students experience, and they pretty much be on the ground very early on in their engineering um, college career. But yes,
Yeah.
so let me go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. You can. Did you want
Yeah,
to
let's
say
do the
something?
last one because I definitely want to start getting into the questions
Okay.
for Edidiong.
Yeah, so this is like an infamous meme. I feel like that the drawing up there is more for like engineering students, but I just kind of look at like sometimes I look at that equation, or I might look at that problem like, what do you want me to do with this? Especially like when you're like looking at a test and you're like, gosh, like where do I start from? You're like, man, what are they trying to ask me here? You're just pondering, you're looking at the question, you're like, man, I know this. And then by the time you get to the answer, like, gosh, I only have like 10 minutes left. Like, so that was kind of like my review for the meme. It's very true. Like sometimes you're like, what are you
What
even
is it telling me?
why?
What is it
Like,
even telling me?
first of all, the professor has too much time on their hands to come up with this complicated question. That's how sometimes I'm like, what? Why did you even like why? Then I have to figure out how to like get the answer. So that's what my review would be.
That's hilarious. And we do have a question by Joanne. Did you want to read it, Eduardo?
Sure. So she has a question. What is some advice you would give your younger self about to start their college career?
Ooh, man, hold up. That is a good question. So, um, prior to me starting my college career, I kind of already knew I wanted to go to a historically Black college or university, HBCU, and so I had already applied to a lot of some of those schools, and I had got in, and then I had a certain trajectory of how I wanted my career to go, and just kind of going into school. I was very adventurous and very ambitious, right? I wanted to do pharmacy, get out of pharmacy, and then do an MD, and then do a PhD. And then when I got to school, it wasn't the school I wanted to go to. So, but I still love my school. Texas Southern University is my school for life. So I
Mm.
wouldn't trade it for nobody else. But at the time, that was not the school that I wanted to go to. But I ended up entering into a STEM scholarship program. And so it's specifically designed to increase minorities in STEM, and that program was called the LSAM program, which is the Louis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation. So they specifically targeted minorities at the school, not just Black people, but Black people, Hispanics, anybody that was considered a minority to enter into the program. And so because of that, I felt challenged. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So even though I had a certain career trajectory, I would tell my younger self to just be open, because your journey looks different than everybody else. And while you're on the journey, like, enjoy each moment of that journey, because you may have your own plan, but then like when you get there, things unfold in such a way where you're like, okay, I couldn't have planned this, but it's definitely beneficial to where I am today. So yes, TSU.
Yeah, there's some more questions that I'll be asking you throughout here.
I saw a question earlier. I think it was from a young female engineer, where she was asking about how was I able to transition from out of the lab into like what I'm doing now. And I think, just to answer that question really quickly, not to throw us off schedule, but basically what I ended up doing was, I said, okay, well, I know I've worked in government just doing the research part, but I was curious about like standards, because in research, there's certain levels of standards that you have to meet from the Environmental Protection Agency, especially when you're talking about, you know, water quality, you're talking about air quality, even if you're talking about just doing different assays, if you're a biologist, whatever the case may be, there are so many different kind of standards. So I was more like, okay, who regulates the standards? You know, who sets the standards? And so I decided I wanted to go and work in the government industry. And so that's kind of like, I just kind of plugged myself in there. It wasn't an easy shoe-in. You know, it was a very rigorous interview. A lot of people interview for this role. And I ended up working for the state in air quality. And so that's kind of like how I kind of transitioned from out of the lab into like compliance. And then from compliance to where I am now in community organizing. So it really just depends on how you want to do it. It doesn't, you have to follow my route, but if you see that, you know, you want to go from the lab into like community organizing and transitioning, there's always that that medium to do so. Also, if you want to do organizing and you don't want to necessarily do the lab, but you have all the education behind that, that's fine. Like, you don't necessarily have to do the lab if you don't want to. But I do think that the lab is beneficial, right, for people who may not be able to get that same kind of experience, especially if you're dealing with people who the most that they have is a high school education, especially in a lot of these underserved communities. So when you go and you further your education and you come back into the community, you let them know, like, hey, this is what this means. It shows that not only do you know your stuff, but you actually care about what you're talking about in that community. You're applying that, and you're bringing the community along. You're not just kind of like, I know this is what I do, this is what you should do. But it's more of like, hey, this is what's happening to you. This is why this is happening. This is what you should do. So you bring the technical part of it. You bring the community organizing part of it. And of course, like, there's always have to be like humanity part about that. So that's how I would, you know, kind of help you move. If you decide you want to move out of the lab, you can do that. So
do you have like an example of what kind of data you collect in that area, whether it's like chemicals, or I'm not sure what you're looking for, but what kind of data do you collect and take it back to, you know, officials, right, elected officials, and what do they do with that data?
So for those who are in the lab, they actually do that. I don't personally do that. But the data collection is really going to be for people who are into hardcore research. So most times, depending on what you're trying to look for data in, especially if you're talking about toxicology, air quality is a really big one, right? So you would basically set up some air canisters around those areas. Right now, what's going on in Houston is, and I don't know if y'all are familiar, but in Houston, there's been a pop-up of several like cancer cluster neighborhoods, right? From environmental toxins in the air, in the water, and all those different things. So what you're seeing is a long-term effect that's carrying now, where you're seeing people who are dying from cancer that some years ago, 20 years ago, that was not the case. And so it's just because of an increase in environmental pollution, right? So basically what's supposed to happen is the TCQ, which is the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. They are the state regulatory agency. Just to kind of break it down, every state has their own environmental regulatory agency, and they're able to set their standards where it can be more stringent than the Environmental Protection Agency, but it can't be less than. so they can have more tighter standards than others. Well, in Texas, that's not really the case. They kind of like go with the bare minimum. They're not going to really interrupt and put like, you know, stringent standards, because then you begin to affect the oil and gas industry, you affect jobs, you affect processes, all those different things. So you would know from an engineering side, like you would have to go back and reconfigure a lot of different things that would cost money. So with Texas, they don't really do all of that. They kind of stay with whatever EPA says. They basically like copy paste it. So as far as the data is concerned, right? What happens is you have certain standards that EPA has for you to collect the data. That data can be air quality. So you put air monitors in different areas where there's an increase of pollution. Maybe there's increase in traffic. Maybe there's a concrete batch plant somewhere around there. Maybe there's a chemical plant that's, you know, around there. Maybe it's a, whatever it may be, something that drags along sand, whatever those things are. So the state has already air monitors around certain areas in the entire state. So specifically in Houston, they have a few monitors that they see data on a regular basis, right? And so they have somebody in that department, in the air quality department, and also the toxicology department, that's reviewing that data on a daily basis. If it spikes up, they're going to see, why did it spike up? What was the cause of those spikes? Especially if it's consistent. Then, so that's from the state side. From the city, they also have air monitors, and then the county has air monitors as well. So everybody has air monitors. It's about how you interpret the data. What does that data mean for this community, and where exactly is the air monitors? Is the air monitor in the ship channel where not a lot of people live out there, or is the air monitors in the communities where you have these pockets of concrete batch plants, right? So in Houston, there is no such thing, not such thing, but they don't have zoning. Right. And so, like in other areas, which is key, because of lack of zoning, you have companies that can set up shop right next to your house, right in your neighborhood, where you're dragging along sand, where you're you're emitting all kinds of volatile organic compounds into the air without it being regulated, where you are influencing the water. Look at Michigan State, you know, they had a whole thing with just the water. That was an environmental issue right there. But because of like lack of zoning, it makes it hard for people, especially neighborhoods, to fight back, because the state and the regulatory agencies kind of say, hey, as long as you meet the requirements, you can be here. And as long as your data that you collect from your company meets the criteria, then you're fine. So as far as it going back to policy, that's the real thing. It's taking that data to policy. And so right now what you're having is a lot of community organizations, civic clubs, things like that are going in and say, hey, we want to bring our own air monitors in. We want to do our own testing of groundwater. We want to do all these things, these outside things. And we're going to bring these things to our elected officials. So that may be your commissioner, that may be your city councilwoman, that might be your congresswoman or congressman, that might be your state senator or your state rep, to go back to their committee meetings. So in Texas, they have like an environmental committee where they can challenge, you know, some certain agencies like TCEQ and say, hey, why is this happening here? We need answers. And they'll go back to the board and maybe review and come up with better policy to actually regulate those agencies. So I feel like that was a lot, but
no, that's all really interesting stuff. I'm just learning. I'm just thinking of how you're using your science degree to advocate for environmental change, and having getting input from the community to take it back and try to make a difference in in your community, which is pretty cool. And I know that one of my friends, his dad is into the whole environmental issues, and he wants to minimize pollution in low-income communities. So, it sounds very familiar with, what he does, but you have the science background on top of it too. So I guess that's kind of my next question too. Like, how does your science background help you with what you're doing now?
Before we go to the next question, can
Sandra,
I ask her something? It's
Yes.
okay. It's okay. No worries. I'm in data analytics within tech, and I work with the California Energy Commissioner. I built the dashboard, like the one that I was just showing, So I wanted to ask you, how do you digest this data? Do you have dashboards? Do they report to you? Uh, Perfect. Yeah, yeah. So this is actually really cool. It's a similar dashboard to what I built in Tableau. So free Tableau commercial here, but it's pretty cool because I don't know if you know this, but the California Energy Commission is actually a leading edge. So usually all of the states look at to what California is doing.
Yep.
And perfect, perfect. So we have some common ground. And to me, working for that state agency was like, I'm like, I am so happy I pay taxes to this agency. It was so beautiful. Everybody was like for the people, returns and savings, like funding, like like schools to make sure that they're like energy efficient, making sure that, like your HVAC, and that's actually where I use my thermodynamics. Your HVAC was compliance. And I actually I used the formula, the pressure equals volume times temperature to make sure who was out of compliance. Yeah. And so that was honestly like the best experience because not only did I challenge myself, like I built a dashboard like that was, used for the state to make sure that, we watch out for our residents and the air pollution. So just wanted to ask you on that, like, how do you use data? And now that it's like, now we're all like, the data is gold, like, and now we're very data driven. And that was one of my key sellers, right? Whenever I wanted to go to another project, I was like, well, with the dashboards that we built, you are able to make educated and faster decisions, and you can make better policies with that too, because we know the state moves on policy. So yeah, I just wanted to ask you more about that. Like, how do you use data every day? Do you use it to like, like shut everybody down? And you're like, no, well, the data shows. Does it play your favor against you? So tell me more about that.
Yeah, so to answer your question, the way the county and just even the city too and the state, everybody has like their own version of what that environmental agency is from the state, the city, and the county. And so the Texas has its own administrative code. And so with that, from the county level, they have what we call a Harris County Pollution Control Service, which is equivalent to the state's version of TCEQ or like California's overall board, right? So that is on a local, very local level. So the county itself will collect its own data, and they use that data now to go in. And right now what they're doing is more community engagement, which is where I come in, right? I say, hey, here are some areas in our communities, right, that are being hard hit with environmental pollution. Here's where you should probably set up an air monitor. Here's where you should probably do some more testing. Because from working for an elected official's office, you get a lot of people who are constituents that are very concerned about their health, concerned about their property, concerned about their community, as you should be, because you should take pride in where you live, right? And so we use that data now to say, hey, how can we do better? How can we create policy? So like I mentioned before, Harris County is working on a climate action plan, and that is going to be data driven. So right now we're working on a survey, right, that puts together something that addresses environmental justice in our precinct and also around Harris County, that says, hey, we need to have our own county action plan that addresses these things. How can we reduce pollution at every level? How can we maximize on green space and making things green, especially with old buildings that are in specific neighborhoods? Maybe that we can turn that into a neighborhood garden, or maybe we can, so there's a lot of different things that kind of go into that. But yes, the data is important at the end of the day, and not just the data, but the quality of the data. You just don't want like random noise. Like, you want things that are significant, that points to whether there's an issue or there isn't an issue. Let's decipher that, because the data won't lie. So that's the integrity of the data is very important. And then utilizing that data now to go back into the neighborhoods and say, okay, this is what this is. So for example, like tomorrow, we're going out to the areas in Harris County and we're putting up signs, right? Signs that are near like concrete batch plant areas, signs of where they're near like chemical plants, where there are neighborhoods there. And we're putting signs up for residents to say, hey, see something, report it. Here's a number to call. This is what you should do. So that's another way to kind of engage them and get them proactive and not just kind of like, I don't really know who I need to call. Well, now we're going in and we're putting those signs in addition to having community meetings and having workshops as well. So we're trying to engage people in that sense. And the data is kind of like the driving force, right, on where we need to go. It kind of points us in the right direction. So, yeah.
Yes, cool. Sorry, Eduardo, keep going. I just wanted to know. And I know that you care about data too, so that's cool.
Yeah, for me, I know we don't have like too much time, and I want to give Edidiong like a little bit more time. Is there anything more you want to tell the audience before we head out? Anything that they should know that's super important that you wouldn't want them to miss? You know, because I know we've had technical difficulties, and you know, want to make sure that we cover everything you want to talk about. Because I still have questions. So.
No, it's a pleasure to be on here. Like you mentioned, I'm Nigerian American, first generation born. And I think that just kind of talking about like the cultural diversity in STEM, I think we definitely need to increase that the more. So I just want to really encourage, you know, people of color out there, especially the women of color, you know, that, hey, first of all, I represent you, you represent me wherever you are. And so I think that just being able to promote, you know, each other, and also having allies such as our men who are in STEM that can also promote women in STEM, especially women of color in STEM. I think that is the key thing. And I also would say, like, don't feel intimidated or don't be afraid if you are the only woman in that space. I've been that person, and especially if you're the only woman of color in that space. I've been that several times where I worked in an industry where it was literally just men who kind of did a lot more of hard labor, and I came with like this background of like I was a chemist at the time, and I did hazardous waste consolidation, hazardous waste, and things like that. But a lot of the men that I worked with did not have like more than a high school education. So it humbled me, right? Because these are just regular folks trying to feed their families, but they're working with toxic things that could, you do the wrong thing and you could die, kind of thing. And so it was on me to make sure that things were going well. And I was the only female there, the only Black female that was able to handle that. So I say to you all who have, you know, women who are in STEM that are of color, you know, don't back down from the challenge. Take it on, because listen, you built for this. You know, you have the brains, you have the talent, and you know, you have the drive at least to go out for that thing. So, and when you're there, just know that it may be tough, but that's why I ask for people who are our allies, right, to make sure that we're mentioned in the rooms, we're included in the meetings, and we're also advocated for when it comes to women in STEM. So,
like Eduardo.
Yeah. I'm just doing my little part.
Exactly.
I make my memes, but obviously with you guys' help too. I think it's interesting, and you know, giving women a chance to talk about what they're doing, because you know, showing faces, you know, women faces is key. I know that they don't see them enough, so here they are every Wednesday, learn more about what they're doing. And yeah, I just want to say thank you for teaching us about, you know, environmental advocacy and what you're doing. And thank you too, Sandra, for making this happen. So
thank you all. One thing I would also say too before we go is that I want people to feel like STEM is fun. Like, I think sometimes people look at STEM and they're like, man, it's
serious, right?
Or like, it looks so challenging. But, you know, STEM is fun, and STEM doesn't have to be your traditional careers. You know, STEM could be whatever you want STEM to be, whatever you have a passion about, whatever you're curious about. You know, like y'all are engineers and y'all decided to go into other areas. I'm in environmental, I'm in chemistry, and I decided to go in a different area. So STEM is what you make it to be. So, you know, I want people to know that it's fun, it's creative, and you can do what you want to do. So it doesn't have to be a traditional route. You know, you can be a non-traditional student. So yeah.
Yep.
Yes, STEM is for everyone. Yes.
Yep. The decision I made joining STEM, definitely.
Yes. STEM
We are
definitely
making
builds
a
the
difference.
future. Oh, I have a friend on here, Jamie Tammy. Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, and everybody who, if they have questions, definitely reach out to her. Edidiong, you can definitely go to the tab up there, drop down and follow her.
Yes.
Definitely reach out if you have questions about environmental stuff. If you're in Texas, I mean, she's doing all this work out there. And if you're interested in making a difference and, passing rules and regulations, I mean, sounds like that's something similar. I mean, that sounds like what you're doing, which I've always been interested in the law side of things as well. Like you said, like, who sets all these regulations, all these standards? It's super important, right? You can't just build anything and expect it to pass every regulation out there. So keeping companies on check is also important.
Yeah. 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 I agree.
So
And a lot of good comments here. STEM is fun.
Yeah.
Needs more female representation. I definitely agree. Somebody mentioned about including art. So yeah, there's definitely STEAM, stream, and there's another acronym for STEM too that kind of like has been birthed out. But yeah, all of those things are also needed in STEM. Oh wow. Be Chris for president. Okay, amen. I claim it.
2024.
Right? Yes.
So,
But yeah,
so Eduardo, did you wanna? I know that you had another question because he gets very
I,
technical.
I
He
like
loves
getting
it.
into it. I mean, yeah, it's fine. I was just one of the questions I had was, how your science degree helps with all the advocacy work you do.
yeah. So that was when we go back to like looking at this, that aha moment that you were talking about, it's
Mm,
happening right now. So
mm,
basically I I do a lot of community organizing anyway. So even outside of work, I was doing that. But a lot of people didn't really understand like what I did for work. You'd be like,
mm.
"Oh, what do you do?" And you kind of explain all these different things. It's not as easy as saying, "Oh, I do this." So now I'm in a space where it makes sense, right? People kind of catch on to what I did and what I do now. So right now I'm a community engagement coordinator for Harris County, and I get a chance to not just focus on environmental justice, but I'm also focusing on like holistic life, and environmental justice is a part of that. But also, you're talking about food insecurity, you're talking about evictions, you're talking about joblessness, you're talking about health. And so, one way that I use my degrees on that is just to be able to not just speak like a lot of like technical jargon and academic jargon to the people, but break it down where I'm bringing them along. And bringing them along means that you're educating them in a way where you want them to know what these things mean, because when they go into these meetings with elected
Hmm.
officials or with like governmental agencies or with people who collect data, they don't know oftentimes what those things mean unless you've read up on it or you've gone to workshops or you've been educated. Your average person is not going to know what all these things means and all these acronyms means. So my
Right.
job, for me, I see that my background works is where I can explain those things to them, and not in a way where it's demeaning or condescending, but in a way where like, oh, this is what they mean by this. This is how this directly impacts you. And
Hmm.
then from there, I'm helping them on the flip side how to organize, right, to get what you want. So part of that is understanding government, right, from the top down, bottom up, and who makes
Yep.
those decisions. The people at the top do. But if I'm at the bottom, which is the county level, I don't really have a whole bunch of say in how these decisions work. But what I can do is empower you to organize so that you can have that, so that your voice is heard, right, and it's felt throughout the chains of government, right? So that's what I try to do is say, hey, I give you the tools that you need. I try to explain and educate the best I can. I give my advice on those things. And then I try to say, hey, now the next step you need to do is to target your elected official who's over this area, who's in a specific committee. If it's environmental, targeted. If it's social justice, targeted. If it's housing, targeted. So we have the opportunity to focus on different things that affects their holistic life, including the environmental part. But when it comes to the environmental part, a lot of people kind of skip over it. They think about, planting trees and recycling, and that's good. There's nothing against that. Do that. You get what I'm saying? But then there's a bigger underlying issue when it comes to, it's not just about recycling, right? Because you talk about like the systemic issues where in other nice neighborhoods, they have recycling. In other areas, they don't have that. So what you look at recycling is a lot of litter. It's a lot of, illegal dumping, because there isn't recycling, because a lot of those neighborhoods, they're kind of like overlooked. So you got to get rid of it. So, hey, it goes out on the street, it goes wherever. And so you begin to look at like those systemic issues. They come from some kind of rooted thing, as opposed to just kind of like, well, let's just do a cleanup. Well, how many times are you going to do a cleanup? How many times are you going to walk around with your group and do, cleanups? It has to come from somewhere. And so I get a chance to use my degrees and use my experience to help to say, hey, we want to move from just doing a cleanup to now our council member needs to step up and do X, Y, and Z. Why can't y'all do this? Okay, now we need to move it up to the mayor. The mayor can't do it. Now we need to move it up to our state representatives. They need to figure something out. So that's kind of like understanding government and understanding how to organize to get what you want, especially when it comes to environmental issues, because environmental issues can be so like lofty to people that when you start to like make it relatable, they're like, oh, the aha moment comes. It's like, oh, so that's what that means. Oh. Dang. So when you begin to break it down, they get it. They're like, nah, I don't like this. How can I change this? So you need people who are in spaces who understand the science, but then also understand the community organizing as well. So
I love this.
It's great.
I'm learning so much. And did you see all the comments, Eduardo, that everybody's like, I'm learning so much in this live. And I think it's so amazing that we never had somebody who's being so like not only impactful, but intentional. You are intentional. You want to make a change. And when did you decide? I'm sorry, like maybe I'm going over. I know Eduardo probably wants you to come back. But
okay.
when did you decide? Like, was it because you worked like all these like fancy companies like NASA, Air Force? You did everything. You're like, okay, now what? Or did you have that like little bug inside of you early on when you were a child? You're like, I want to make a change. I want to do something that is going to help, that's bigger than me, essentially.
Yeah, so it's twofold, right? I've always had that bug as a child. My dad actually was one of the people who influenced me to get a degree in environmental toxicology, has a PhD in it. And so he would take me out when I was younger, and like in high school, he would take me to do some of his research projects that he was working on. At that time, I had really bad asthma. So, and then like our family, we have like history of asthma, and they wanted to understand more about air quality and the impact on the respiratory system. So he would take me out and we would do different things and stuff like that. And I just remembered that. I was like, okay, I like that. That seemed pretty cool. I think you can make some money out of that, right? But what made the switch for me was actually during this pandemic with the social unrest in 2020, especially with George Floyd. And I'm a person who naturally am an advocate, right? That's just kind of my overall personality. If you know me, like Jamie Tammy, you'll see that like, hey, man, you want to go out there and fight. And unfortunately, the position that I was in did not allow for me to do that. While I was helping people with those who had been hit by Hurricane Harvey with their homes, I also was seeing that something like was happening real time right now. And I just didn't have the opportunity to go out there and either protest or to have a conversation like I really wanted to. I did have conversations, but it maybe sparked something like, I really want to be in the community. Like, I want to do more community work as opposed to kind of doing more of like a desk work or like looking at production. Like I said before, not that I don't like the lab, but I'm a more people person. So that was kind of nagging at me like, man, I want to do something that's in the community. And then I was able to, be a community engagement coordinator now. So that's where I was like, okay, now how can I take advantage of the information I know, right, that I learned while I was in school and apply it here. And that's kind of like where the things just kind of married each other. And I was just like, yo, this is perfect. Especially working with communities where they're like, they need help. Like, it's like they need guidance. They need somebody to help them, you know, navigate how to get through the red tape and all of the, you know, protocols of, you know, trying to change things in their community. And so I help do that, and I help connect people with other nonprofit and other organizations that have been doing the work before I came on the scene, and connect them and say, hey, these are some communities that you should definitely target. Oh, you're already working with them? This is great. Now, how can we partner with the academic institutions to get the research going, to get the data, like we were talking about, Sandra, you know, partnering with those people and saying, hey, now we have the data, we have the community, and now we have the government. We should be able to make some things change systemically, not just like small changes where you're like, oh, I got a recycle bin, but like, how do we change the actual policy, right? So those are the things that I felt like it made sense, like when I finally got into this role. And I don't know what the next role would be either, so I'm definitely open-minded, but where I'm at now, it's like, oh, okay, so I get the chance to use my chemistry, I use my environmental toxicology, and I'm also using my organizing as well. So yeah.
Wow,
That's
we
great.
might
You're a
have
leader.
interviewed the next president. Yeah, I was gonna say we might have interviewed the next. I'm saving
No, that's
this.
good leadership.
Again,
No, that's good leadership.
I receive all of it. I receive all of it.
Yeah, that's great leadership, Edidiong. You know, it takes.
My Instagram is at @E_CHRYS_Chris. So you look.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, you should be able to drop down, and then
drop down on the arrows, and you'll see, and you can like there.
Exactly. Yeah, Edidiong, you're a leader clearly in your community, and that's great. That's what I like to see. You know, that's what I like to talk about is people that talk about stuff like that, positive things. And you know, there's also the other side, people that do, like, for example, you're doing the environmental side, and then there's people that are doing, you know, that are in the oil and gas, and you know, how do they feel about all that stuff?
Yeah.
You know, because some people are more environmental than others, so what are they thinking? You know?
Yeah. I remember when we were doing, there was a major upset in the ship channel, and I was on the emission events team. So emission events is basically where an event happens where you go over the threshold of the allowed permittable emissions in the air. So there was a major emission event, a lot of smoke. It was a big deal. And we had to figure out what caused it. And it was a chemical company. They had to figure out what the root cause was, and they had to meet the affirmative defense. So just because of that, you kind of get an idea of what's the most important thing to them. And each time that they're shut down, each time they're losing money, because that's based on a production. As an engineer, you know that. You know, so production is a key thing for those kind of businesses. Well, you got to shut it down because people are impacted. Like, people are inhaling smoke. Their health is impacted. The business is impacted. So it's like, when you have a major event like that, we got to get to the root cause and then figure out how we can change it. So, you know, those are some of the things where I'm like, I see where oil and gas is. You know, I see where you can definitely see the positives and the negatives depending on any industry, really. So, yeah.
Yeah. Even making the change, right, from going from fuel to no fuel, it's kind of drastic change. So we have to do it slowly. It's a process. So hopefully we move towards the more healthy side, which the data will tell us, right?
Yes. For sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thanks for being here. I think we've been going over the time here, but that's totally okay. There's so much more to talk about, really. You know,
we have to have a part 2.
Right? Let's do it. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, we'll have more environmentalists and people that are doing similar things. Just educate us on the codes, because I'm dealing with those more and more. So those are important.
You know what? That's perfect, because we've been thinking of like, how can we like have more impact with our Women in STEM Wednesday shows, and I know that Eduardo really cares for, you know, to include everybody and make this even bigger and more impactful and more intentional, like you, Edidiong. And yeah, maybe we should have like a little like vertical for environmental
Yeah,
because we don't have much science, and I know that we need that. We are definitely going through a climate change and environmental issues, and we need to be more proactive with that.
for sure.
For sure,
Definitely.
for sure. I'm always
We'll,
open. I'm here.
yeah, we'll be reaching out.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All
guys.
right. Well, I'll let you all have a good night. And thank you for being here. Thanks for doing this, Sandra, and having me a part of this again. I'm just making my memes, trying to make an influence, and now have all you ladies support is just amazing. And I'm just happy to be here and support it. So thank you, Sandra, for keeping it going. And STEMedia, you can watch it on YouTube. Don't forget that. All the sponsors, Lumis Automation. There's a lot of people behind this. So everybody watching, thank you for tuning in.
Yes,
Yes,
I'll
thank
let
thank
you
you,
all
you.
go.
everybody.
All right. Have a good night. All right.
All
Have
right.
a- Did you have anything else, or like, I know that your female engineer or Joanne already asked you what advice you would give to yourself, but I guess what is the worst advice that you've gotten? I just heard this like question in one of like a podcast, and I thought it was interesting. What's the worst advice that you've gotten?
The worst advice I've gotten. Ah, I don't know if I've gotten really like worst advice. Let me see. Yeah,
I'll
I
go
don't know.
first.
I don't know.
I
Go
was
ahead.
asked, yeah, I think that I was in community college, and I didn't have that much money to support myself through college. And one of my advisors told me to drop my engineer major because she didn't think I could make it. I'm
Mm,
glad I didn't follow that advice.
okay. Okay. I don't know if I'll call it worst advice, but remember I said that I wanted to be a pharmacist.
Yeah.
And so, just in me trying to go through that track, they had like pharmacy electives. And the advice I got was if you want to do pharmacy, then you need to go into retail. And I hated retail because I worked retail as a high school student. And I was just like, it is not for me. And so now I'm going to do pharmacy in retail, negative. So when I thought about it, I was like, yeah, pharmacy, I don't think pharmacy is a route for me. So
Well,
yeah,
that's good.
yeah. So I think that would be it. Yeah.
Okay, well, is there anything else that you want to tell everybody watching you? Because this will be, you know, we'll have it safe in the Engineering Means Guys channels, IGTV, as well as STEMedia's YouTube. So, is there anything else that you want to leave with?
Well, no, it was a pleasure, Sandra, for having me on. I'm really excited. I was really excited just to get the invite. You guys again follow me on Instagram, E_CHRYS. And I also do a podcast called Educate Your Vote. So you get a chance to those regulatory people that we're talking about and the elected officials, you get a chance to learn more about what they do and how they impact your daily life. I also have some things where it's, the Just with Chris and just kind of more advocacy things. So you follow my page, you kind of get a little bit more of, some of the things that I do, some things I'm passionate about. Obviously, culture, as you can see from the background, my pillows and everything. But yeah, no, I'm thankful for the opportunity. And yeah, part 2 is coming soon.
Yes, part two is coming soon. You'll be the host. And yes, so you've heard Edidiong.
Yes.
And yes, so if you want to know more ways on how to use your STEM background and career and your passion for STEM and be an impact to the community or just do more outreach and more changes in your community, contact her, follow her, and yeah, join her cause and movement. Thank
Uh,
you. Thank you so much. Have a
Y'all
good
have a good
night.
night. All right.
Thank you. Bye.